very frustrating, but my camera is not working. So I'm going to try something else quickly. Sorry guys, whoever is listening, I really do apologize. I'm not sure why my camera is not working. It was working last week, now it's not working. Let me try and figure this out. Give me a minute to try and work this out. Okay, this should be working now. Let's see. this is so frustrating. Sorry to everybody who's watching. I'm not sure if anything is coming through. This was working 2 weeks ago and now it is not working, so very frustrating. So just hang on, I'm going to try and sort it out. I don't want to be wasting any of your time. So hang on a minute. Oh, is something happening? Could be. Okay, I see we've got 3 viewers. Lovely to have you here. Thank you for bearing with me. I think I must just send a note to my newsletter members to tell them that we're on a new stream URL now, unfortunately. So give me a minute while I just share that with them so that they know where to go. So here we go. I'm just going to go to my live. And hang on a minute, and then we'll get started. Okay, let me just get this and send it on quick. Hang on 1 minute. Okay, great. There we go. Thank you to everybody for joining me today. We'll just hang on 1 more minute just to see if anybody else joins us. Hopefully it all runs smoothly from now on. Please give me a thumbs up or let me know if you can hear me. You can hear what's happening.
I'm not taking shortcuts. I just don't believe in doing repetitive work in 2025. I've tried the whole house. Shortcuts, I just don't believe in.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, I think we're sorted. So let us begin with today. So once again, thank you. We've got 4 viewers, so a couple more people have joined on. So I'm really happy to see that. Really glad it's not all gone to waste. We have lost a little bit of time. Sorry about my phone in the screen there. Just seen it. Anyway, yeah, so basically in today's live watercolor session, we're going to be looking at how to paint a watercolor poppy. In my Patreon, there was a request to paint poppies, specifically quite loose watercolor poppies with line, so using pen and wash. And so what I did was I created a bunch of different poppy outlines as templates that can essentially be used to trace. What I did today is I used this particular poppy and I held it up against a window with my watercolor paper and I traced the outline. And that is just an easy way to get an accurate shape down especially if you struggle with getting your proportions right, or if you just want to skip the drawing part and get onto the painting. And of course, you can also print these templates onto watercolor paper if your printer allows, which is a lovely way to do some quick, easy coloring or painting. So these are available for my Patreon members, and it is there on the dashboard for you guys to get. And with this set, you also get 39 PNG or transparent PNG digital stamps. So as if you've known me for a while, you'll know that I love watercolor and traditional media in art, but I also really enjoy working on Procreate and playing with digital art. And so these outlines offer a great template for you to create your own digital drawings with. You can use them as a basic structure. You can use them to create stamps or stickers or clip art or decals for cards, etc. Some of my members on my group use it for apps like GoodNotes or Notability, and they take the little flower stamps and they put them on whatever day of the week it is, etc. And it gives quite a nice graphic element as well. So it comes in quite a big set of that can be used for various things. Okay, so like I said, I took my poppy. This was the one that I chose. I quite liked the whimsical nature of it. I traced it out in pencil, and then I used my permanent ink pens. The ones I use are the Sakura Micron and the Faber-Castell Pitt pen. And I very loosely and in a kind of sketchy way, I outlined the flower and the stem and the bulb, and I added some extra little hairs to the stem and to the bulb, and that just gives it more of an illustrative quality. And I wanted that kind of sketchy effect. I think that works quite nicely with watercolor. And as you can see, not all my edges are completely outlined. In some areas I've left them unfinished, and that adds to that loose quality of watercolor or line and wash. Okay, right, so let's just talk about the materials and the supplies that I'm going to be using today. Firstly, I'm using this 300 gram cold press water, which is perfect for watercolor. It means it doesn't buckle. It holds water beautifully. There's nothing worse than painting on thin paper and your page just warps. And then you can't really frame your artwork, or you can't use it for a card. So I quite like this particular watercolor pad. This is the one that I got, and it's quite a substantial. It's got 30 sheets here, and I've done a few of my watercolors on this particular paper. And then I'm also using my Kuretake Gansai watercolor paints, which are lovely. I usually use Winsor & Newton, but recently I've been using these because they've got such a lovely vibrant pigment, and I find that I just love the depth of the color here, and so especially for these poppies, the vibrant reds and greens will work really well. And then I'm using these two brushes. These are my Escoda brushes, which I just love because they seem to hold the pigment for a long time without running out, which work beautifully. And then, like I said, I've got my permanent marker pens. I might have mentioned this already, but these are permanent ink. So what that means is once I've outlined, I can paint watercolor over it without them bleeding, without them dirtying or muddying the color. If you've worked with felt tip pens, you will have maybe experienced that before. But if you draw with a felt tip pen and then you paint over it with watercolor, it's going to bleed, it's going to change your colors, etc. These stay nice and clean and crisp, and your lines stay clean, basically. Then I have a pot of water to wash my brushes, some paper towel. I've got a nice ceramic color palette. I like ceramic better than plastic because plastic eventually tends to stain with the pigment. Ceramic doesn't. It's very easy to clean, and also it's a lovely surface to mix your colors on. So that I'm very happy with. It was a good buy. Okay, so let's begin. This is how it's going to work today. If you were in my last live, you'll know I'll talk a little bit and then I'll get on to the painting. And what I'd like you to do is just follow along and paint along with me. There's going to be some silent times. You are welcome to ask me anything in the chat, and every now and then I'll have a peek and I'll reply to you. So feel free to drop any comments down. Also, I would love to find out where you're from. Last time we had such a range of different areas, and I thought 2 o'clock in London time seems a difficult time. It's the only real time I can do at the moment because my daughter is at school until 3. So I thought it's sort of the latest in the day that I can do a live. I'm going to try a Friday night at some point. So let me know in the comments if you would be interested in a Friday night session at some point. Maybe like a paint and sip. Somebody actually asked me if I would do a paint and sip, and that actually might be really fun. Maybe you've done one before. Anyway, okay, so let's begin. I'm going to start off with my size 4 brush. And actually, I think before I start, I'm going to swatch out some colors. Now, swatching out colors is really, really important because it gives you a good idea of what colors work well with one another and what colors you're going to use in your final poppy. Because often your watercolor paints, when they dry, can look quite different to when you've painted them down. So it's a good idea to swatch out some colors. So you're going to pick some colors that you think might work beautifully and you're going to paint them on your page. So we're going to do that quickly. Okay, I'm going to go for I think I'm going to go for, let's see, what is that? Just a plain red. Let's see what this does. There's a lovely red. Oh, that's a lovely bright color. It's very, very poppy red, that. Okay, and then I'm going to try a little bit of cadmium scarlet, which has a slightly more orange pigment to it, but it's quite nice as well. Now, I actually think those two colors, I'm going to try and keep my palette quite minimal. And actually with watercolor, they say if you mix too many colors, you lose that unified effect in your final painting. So it's a good idea to try and keep the amount of colors you use quite minimal. And that's a lovely yellow, which I'll use very subtly on some of the petals. Okay, now let's have a look at what we're going to paint our stem and our bulb with. Okay, I think I'm going to go for some olive green. I quite like this olive green. For some of the darker areas. That's a lovely olive green. And what I'm doing here is just using a method called, to swatch these, I'm painting wet on dry. So I'm wetting my brush and I'm painting it on a dry surface. And that is the most basic way to use watercolor paints, is wet on dry. But of course you can use the more advanced technique, which is called wet on wet. So you paint down your water, like so, not too much. And then you pick up some of your pigment. I'm going to go for my sap green, which is a very popular green. Let's see. Here's my sap green. And then you drop it into the water. And what it does, it gives you that lovely bloom effect. Those are called blooms, watercolor blooms. Okay. Then I think for the stem, to add a little bit of a more, I don't know, sort of like a more earthy tone to the color, I'm going to use some of my, let's see, some of my yellow ochre, just to mute those colors slightly, and a little bit of my burnt sienna. Okay, and I'll use those to mute those colors. I also think I need a very small touch of almost a blue. So I think I'm going to, let's see, I think I'm going to go for maybe a touch of indigo. This is actually my indigo. It's very intense, but it might be quite nice for shadows. Okay. Okay. All right, so there I have my colors. What I do want to mention is that with watercolor, you will find that it always appears more vibrant when it is wet. But as soon as it dries, it gets a little bit lighter. So watercolor always becomes lighter when it is dry. Okay, so that's a good thing to bear in mind. So at the moment, these are quite vibrant. And to be honest, the Kuretake does dry very vibrantly. So it's not too much of a worry with this particular watercolor paint, but I'm not sure what you are using. So good idea to swatch it out, test it out before you begin. Okay, so let's begin our process. Okay, so when we have a look at this flower, I would imagine that the sun is sort of shining from the left-hand side. Okay, hitting the petals around about here and here, maybe a little bit under this petal, tiny bit under this petal, on this petal here. There'll be more of a shadow here, a shadow along this side. You can see I've emphasized that with the pen. And so I think we're going to add a little bit of shadow onto the petals, a little bit of darker red, and then build it up like that. So let's start with our first layer. And I'm going to go straight for that red. Start painting that out. Now, as I paint out, I am going to leave some areas quite light. And I'm going to leave some white areas as well. So I'm not covering the whole thing because I want that kind of sketchy, unfinished, slightly unfinished quality to this. And you, by leaving some areas completely white, you create a more luminous effect with your watercolors. And that's quite beautiful on flowers and petals. Sort of doing petals opposite one another so that I don't blend them. And slowly just adding slightly more pigment as I go along, bleeding that pigment into where I feel the shadows should be on this poppy. And I'm working in just little strokes as I go along. So again, while it's still wet, I'm just deepening the color, pushing that pigment along. This part of the process is incredibly therapeutic. Quite meditative, and a wonderful mindful activity to be involved in. And very importantly, it's about not trying to be perfect. Now, they say that perfection kills creativity, and I absolutely believe that, having taught for very many years and watching wonderfully talented children come into my classroom who just get absolutely stunted in their art because they feel that it's not perfect enough. And that's such a sadness, because actually art is about the process. It's about making mistakes, it's about messing, it's about being free and loose, and it's a very important part of play. And a friend of mine was telling me recently how it's so important that we play. We find ways to play in our lives. It's really important for our brains. And this is one way that we can do that, by just being free, not thinking about creating something perfect, but enjoying the process and playing. I'm just deepening that as I go along. I feel like this area needs to be a bit darker. So another thing that you can do with watercolor, which is quite lovely, is you can use a technique called scrubbing, where if you feel that your edge of your watercolor is too hard, you can just use your slightly damp brush and scrub the surface, and then it moves the paint around a little bit, which is quite a nice way to get rid of unwanted, very structured lines. I feel like I need to go a little bit deeper with my red. This red is lovely, but I'm actually going to go even a little bit deeper. Maybe actually I'm going to go for carmine, a lovely carmine red. It's got more of a pinky undertone, and it's slightly more intense. I'm going to just drop it in there. like so. Okay, next I'm going to start with the stem. I'll come back to those petals, and I want to add a little bit of a yellow, just a touch of yellow to it later on. But for now I want to work on the stem. So let's go for our olive green. And we will start with just a touch of olive green on the one side, quite loosely, like so. Thank you again for just bearing with me with the technical glitch in the beginning. I'll try and get it right next time. Bit frustrating, but thank you for hanging on, and hope you're all enjoying your painting process. Okay, and then I'm going to fill in these leaves very loosely, because we want to create quite a loose watercolor here. Okay, and it's starting to take shape. Okay, next I'm going to add a little bit of my sap green to the central area. What would you call that of the poppy? Is that, it's not the anther or the stamen, I'm not sure what part of the poppy that is, but the center of the poppy. Let's add a little bit of our sap green. And I'm going to mix it a bit with my olive green. Just dab my brush because it was a bit too much water there. I just want to take off some of that green so that the black outline shines through quite clearly. Okay, and I'm just going to fill in some of my sap green here over this highlight and over the top of this bulb here. Okay, now let's go into this and just add a touch of yellow. Cadmium yellow is very bright and very intense, so I'm going to water it down quite a bit. Put it on my palette, get some water, water it down, dab it a little bit, and then I'm going to just put a little bit over these edges of the flowers, and you can see it just enriches that color a little bit more. just very subtle, not working on it too much. Okay, and then I think I'll just deepen the shadows on the bulb and on the stem slightly, and then we'll look at a background. Okay, so there we have it, just a very simple loose poppy, line and wash. You can do a lot more with this, but that's the basic technique that you can use for any of the poppies in the template or any of your own poppies that you draw. Having a look at the leaves and the petals and where the light shines, where there are highlights, where there are shadows, and how to create a sense of luminous petals. And then for a background, I haven't thought really about what we should do for a background today, but I think let's create a kind of loose wash in the background. Sometimes what I like to do is take some of the green, water it down quite a lot, and then I'm going to just do some slight washes off the edges, give it the sense of a watercolor. Paint some watercolor on here. And then I think about creating more of a diagonal line in my composition for the background, which just makes the composition more interesting. So have a watercolor wash that sort of works along from the top left to the bottom right. Drop in some of this. Just very subtle. And then we'll go for, put some water down here, and let's go for some of this, to create a sense that the watercolor is bleeding off the edges. Also breaks that sense of perfection in your artwork. Okay, so there we have it. Now I'll just let that dry, but I wonder how yours are looking. I'd love to see. A few people sent me their creations from last week's sunflower, and I was so impressed and just overjoyed that you followed along with the process and that you could take something from it. I really hope today has helped you as well. Next week I won't be doing a live, but I will be doing a live the following week. So I'm going to try and schedule a live for every 2 weeks. We're going to stick with the flower theme for the next live. If you have any particular flower you would like me to paint, please let me know. But yeah, lovely to have you with me here today. Wishing you all a wonderful end to the week and a wonderful weekend. Stay in touch, and I'll see you soon.